Hi friends. Okay, when we last left Ralph, he was trapped inside the pillowcase as the housekeeper was cleaning his room and a neighbor's dog was barking at him. So let's see what happens next. Well, hello, you cute little thing, said the maid, revealing to Ralph that she was even sillier than he had thought. As if there was anything cute about a terrier that could scarcely see through his own hair. The dog went on yapping, a bit self-consciously, Ralph thought, now that he knew he was being admired by the maid. A man's steps came thumping down the hall. "Stop your racket, you pesky mutt," said the owner's voice, and Ralph knew when the bark suddenly came from above him that the dog had been snatched up. "Let me down and I'll dig him out," yapped the dog as he was carried away. "Just let me down for 1 minute and I'll show you." Suddenly, Ralph felt himself being tumbled about in the pillowcase. He did not even have to think about what to do. He automatically grabbed for the motorcycle and held on with all his strength. Even though he had been tipped upside down with his feet in the air, Ralph knew he was being lifted up inside the bundle of bed linen and carried down the hall. He lay still, his front paws locked around the front wheel of the motorcycle, waiting to see what would happen next. The maid walked a short distance to what Ralph judged to be the linen room, and there she dumped her armload of bedding before she went off to clean another room. Ralph was deep in the hamper, where no light filtered through at all. These sheets and pillowcases were on their way to the laundry, and since he had no wish to be laundered, any more than he had wished to be thrown out with the trash, there was only one thing for him to do: start chewing. Ralph ripped into the pillowcase with his sharp teeth, and in no time he had made a ragged hole, which he crawled through. When he tried to pull the motorcycle after him, he discovered the hole was too small. He had to stop and chew it bigger before he could pull the machine out along with him. Ralph chewed through another layer of cloth, and then another as he worked his way upward, each time enlarging the hole for the motorcycle. His jaws began to ache, and still another layer of cloth laid ahead. This time, a damp bath towel, which would make for slow chewing. Ralph was forced to make a decision. Did he want to save his life, or did he want to be carried off to the laundry with the motorcycle? There was only one answer. He wanted to save his life. He must abandon the motorcycle. With aching jaws, Ralph chewed onward and upward, moving faster now that he was making mouse-size holes instead of motorcycle-size holes. The bath towel had left an unpleasant, furry taste in his mouth. Gradually, light began to filter through the cloth until finally, when Ralph thought he could not force his jaws to close on one more mouthful of fiber, he emerged into the daylight at the top of the hamper. Ralph gasped, rubbing his aching jaws and wading across the sheets to the edge of the hamper. He leaped lightly to the floor and, hugging the baseboard, scurried down the hall to room 215, where he flattened himself and squeezed under the door. Safe but exhausted and filled with remorse at the loss of Keith's motorcycle, Ralph dragged himself off to the mouse hole to catch up on the sleep he should have had that day. Chapter 8, A Family Reunion. The next thing Ralph knew, his mother was shaking him by the shoulder. "Wake up," she said. "Ralph, wake up. Room service has brought us another meal." Room service? Ralph rubbed his eyes, not believing what he had heard. Room service has brought our dinner? Yes, a real feast. A whole blueberry muffin and a chocolate chip cookie, said Ralph's mother. "Get up. We are having a family reunion." It all came back to Ralph. "Oh, room service," he said, understanding at last. "You mean the boy, Keith." "He is room service to me." Ralph's mother sounded happy and carefree. Ralph sat up. Already his aunts and uncles and many squeaky cousins were arriving by secret paths in the space between the walls. It was a long time since anyone had had enough food for a family reunion, and there was rejoicing in the mouse nest for everyone but Ralph. He was thinking of the motorcycle he had lost and the promise he had broken. He had a dull, heavy feeling in the pit of his stomach, and he did not feel like celebrating. "Why, there's Ralph," squeaked his Aunt Sissy, who thought she was better than the rest of the family because she lived in the bridal suite, where she led her relatives to believe riches of rice fell to the carpet when the bride took off her hat and the groom shook out his coat. The rest of the family knew that Aunt Sissy was not as grand as she pretended to be, because very few brides and grooms came to this hotel these days. My, how you've grown. Ralph never knew what to say when people told him how he had grown. Well, well, if it isn't Ralph, said Uncle Lester, who had a nest inside the wall of the housekeeper's office, where the maids dropped donut crumbs every morning at 10 o'clock when they had their coffee. What's this I hear about you riding up and down the halls on a motorcycle? Uncle Lester had a way of saying the wrong things at the wrong time. My land, a motorcycle, said old Aunt Dorothy. Isn't that pretty dangerous? Wouldn't mind riding one myself if I were a few years younger, Uncle Lester said. All the little cousins came crowding around Ralph. Show us your motorcycle, they squeaked. We want to ride it. Come on, give us a ride on your motorcycle, Ralph. Huh, Ralph, come on, please. Ralph knew he was expected to be polite to all of his relatives, even the squeaky little cousins. Well, embarrassed and ashamed, he looked down at the floor. I sort of lost the motorcycle in a pile of sheets and pillowcases. Lost the motorcycle? Oh, Ralph, cried his mother, genuinely alarmed. Ralph knew what she was thinking. Did this mean the end of room service? Did she have to go back to pilfering crumbs for his brothers and sisters? That's a young mouse for you, said tactless Uncle Lester. Can't take care of anything. If anybody asks me, I think it's a good thing he lost it, said Aunt Dorothy. Riding a motorcycle is just plain foolhardy. All the little cousins looked disappointed and sulky. I don't think he ever had a motorcycle, said one. I bet he just made it up, said another, and the rest agreed. Ralph felt terrible. The family reunion swirled on around him. The muffin and the cookie were divided. Cousins fought over the blueberries. Uncles, usually overweight uncles, asked for second helpings. Everyone talked at once. The little cousins finished their dinner and went racing around the mouse nest. The aunts and uncles raised their voices to be heard above the racket their children made. Suddenly, there came from the knothole a noise that drowned out the squeaks and the squeals of young mice at play. Shh! Not a mouse moved. They looked at one another, too terrified to speak. Psst! Hey, Ralph, come on out, whispered Keith at the entrance to the mouse nest. Ralph's mother gave him a little shove, but no one spoke. With heavy feet, Ralph walked to the knothole, but he did not go out into room 215. What do you want? He asked. You and your family had better be quiet in there, or my mother will hear you. You know how she is about mice. I don't know why people say things are as quiet as mice. You sound like a pretty noisy bunch to me. Behind Ralph, his relatives began to tiptoe quietly away to their own homes, leaving his mother to do all the cleaning up. Did you have a nice picnic? Ralph asked, dreading what he must tell the boy. Yes, we saw an old mining town with a real jail and bars on the windows. Keith reached into his pocket and pulled out something curved and hard and white, with a rubber band fastened to it, with a piece of Scotch tape. I brought you a present, he said. Come on out. Puzzled and curious, Ralph squeezed through the knothole. What is it? He asked. Whatever the object was, he had never seen anything like it. Half a ping-pong ball I found down in the game room, said Keith. See, I padded the inside with thistledown and anchored the rubber band to the top with Scotch tape. What for? Ralph still did not understand. A crash helmet for you, Keith said. Keith set the half ping-pong ball on Ralph's head and slipped the rubber band carefully around his whiskers until it rested under his chin. There, that's just right. You need it big so there'll be plenty of room for your ears. When you ride a motorcycle, you need a crash helmet. All right, we'll be back for the next session soon.